Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Emily Lefevers from the Miami University Alumni Association, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this session of Winter College 2022. For more than 18 years, Winter College has been the Alumni Association's premier alumni education event. We are so excited to be able to bring it to a broader audience again this year in our virtual format. We have had an amazing lineup over the past 2 days. You can navigate the full schedule by clicking Events by Type on this website's top toolbar and selecting Winter College 2022 from the drop-down menu. Feel free to join programs even while they're in progress, and don't worry if you can't make it to all of them, as sessions will be recorded and posted online. In today's session, we will explore the world of food writing, YouTube stardom, fermentation, and cheddar brownies with Katie Quinn, class of 2008. This session will be hosted by Dr. Howard Kleiman, Miami's Professor Emeritus of Media and Communication. Howard Kleiman joined the Miami faculty in 1983 after teaching at the University of Missouri-Kansas City. His research and teaching interests are electronic media policy and regulation, First Amendment issues, and broadcast journalism. Kleiman's articles have appeared in Journalism Quarterly, Journalism of Broadcasting and Electronic Media, Communication Law and Policy, and the Encyclopedia of Television. Kleiman, a 1994 faculty member at CNN, earlier worked in video production and was a Vista volunteer in Alaska. He earned a doctoral degree from the University of Oregon. Katie Quinn is class of 2008 and is a video creator, podcast host, and cookbook author. She thinks there is a story to be told everywhere, and she believes that food connects people. Every week, she posts food and travel videos to her YouTube channel, Q Katie. Her slogan is "Keep it quirky," because she thinks life both in the kitchen and out of it is more enjoyable if you don't take yourself too seriously. You may have caught her on NBC's Today Show as a contestant on the Food Network's Chopped or as a judge on Beat Bobby Flay. She attended Le Cordon Bleu Culinary School in Paris and is the author of Cheese, Wine, and Bread, published by HarperCollins William Morrow Imprint, and the Avocados Cookbook, published by Short Stack Editions. She co-hosts the Food 52 podcast network show, Either Side Eaters. Before starting the Q Katie brand, she worked for NBC, Serious Eats, and as a VJ for Now This News. She received a Bachelor of Arts in Communication and Theater from Miami. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. Dr. Kleiman, take it away.
Thank you, Emily. When I do these, and I've done a few alumni webinars, I always say this because it's always true. One of the great perks of teaching is not only dealing with these great students while they're on campus, but watching what happens after they leave. And seeing the arc of Katie's career and all the things that Emily just described is really, really cool, because I knew Katie very well when she was on campus, and seeing again all the success for you. It's just terrific. So thank you. Thank you for doing this. The other reason, besides the fact we knew each other well while you were here, the other thing that makes hopefully me a good host for this is my wife and I are pretty serious foodies. And so watching what Katie has done, it was like, oh, this is exactly the right person to talk to. So Katie, I know the answer to this, but the audience won't, of course, which is what you did at Miami. So can you talk a little bit? I think the audience is always interested in what were the kind of formative things that somebody did while they were on campus that maybe helped them get to whatever they're doing, professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. And so first of all, thank you, Dr. Kleiman, for talking with me today. I was so excited I get to see you, albeit virtually. And Emily, thank you for that excellent introduction. I'm really excited to be here because I loved my time at Miami, and it was so formative. And so getting to your question, Dr. Kleiman, how my experience there shaped kind of the career and what I've ended up doing. And the answer is kind of in every way. So like, if you look just on paper at my, mass communications major, theater minor, well, both of those things literally play a role every single day in what I do. So the theater stuff, obviously with the presenting, right? So I do a lot of video hosting stuff. I give presentations for companies like Google and TripAdvisor, and I'm invited to do those kinds of things. So the theater major obviously came right in handy with that. in terms of projecting and, confidence in front of people and memorizing lines and all that kind of stuff. Maybe less like tapping into a character, but still. And then obviously mass communications, and I focused on production there. So mass communications, understanding messaging to a large group of people that is not you, right? And often adjusting that, rewording things, how a flow and how to tell a story, right? How to get from A to Z. And then the nuts and bolts of the production classes I took that first put a camera in my hands and then had me go to a computer and edit video together. These are literally things that I do on a, if not daily, weekly basis for my work, for both, my own YouTube channel, but also through my brand. QKD LLC is the company that I started. I also, I do things for various clients, really all around the world. So in every way, the things that I did at Miami really set me up for success in this career and I'm sure we'll get more into this, but I didn't know what career I wanted while I was at Miami, right? So it was kind of one of those things where all these things joined together to create this career that I kind of didn't even know existed at the time.
Sure. And it hardly did, right? I mean, you've really caught the wave in terms of a whole new way of presenting oneself and carving out that niche. So your timing,
You're exactly
was perfect. Yeah. What kinds of things did you do? The majors, as you said, were really perfect for you in terms of what you're doing now. What kinds of extracurriculars were you involved in that might be, again, particularly useful to you now?
Yeah, so the first one that comes to mind is that I was on Campus Activities Council. So we would help put together events for guests to come to Miami and speak to students. And, we would host them and kind of do all of the marketing around campus for this person coming and presenting at the college and or at Miami. And I think that gave me a real tangible experience with professionals, right? With people in the outside world who have done something really cool with their lives, and getting to interact with those people. And, we would go out to dinner with them, right? The group of us on the Campus Activities Council, we would really get some one-on-one time with them, or at least in a small group setting, to ask questions and just kind of be around them. And so that was eye-opening for me, who's a girl from small town Ohio, who then went, of course, to college in small town Ohio. That was really cool. Like, ooh, so-and-so is coming from the big city. And it was really eye-opening.
I went back and looked at our email history, and one of the things, and in particular, that probably drew the most attention was when you applied for the PAGE program at NBC. Some people may know.
I apologize how much I may have knocked on your door about that.
That was wonderful, because Miami in our program has a great history of being able to get students in the PAGE program. People may know it if they watch 30 Rock, and see Kenneth the Page. It is the most prestigious, really, and long-lived of any kind of feeder program into big media companies. It's been around since, you probably have a date, I know, at least it was still radio before really NBC.
Yeah, I mean, Regis Philbin was a PAGE. Yeah. So, yeah.
So talk about that, because that is an incredible achievement, because every sharp college senior who studies media wants to get in that. And you did. So talk about that.
Yeah. That was kind of the other seminal thing that happened, I would say, in my career to set me up to where I am now. And I thought about bringing that up even when it was like, how did Miami help set you up for this? Because it was through, really, I talked with a Miami alum who worked at NBC who had gone through the PAGE program. And that went so far because there are so many applicants to the PAGE program. And that helped put my resume aside like this huge stack, right? So it actually got eyes on it. And then, one thing led to the next. I went to New York for the interview, and it was a very intimidating interview process. And then, came out the other side. And the really cool thing about the program is that it's a rotational basis. So it lets you dip your toe in various parts of NBC. And so I could kind of see, what would it be like to work in politics? What would it be like to work in the entertainment side of things like SNL? What would it be like to work, at the Today Show, which is part news, part lifestyle, but like the live element. So all of these examples I've just given were assignments that I had. And it really helped me narrow down what I actually want to do with all these skills that I gained at Miami and am now trying to put into use in the real world. It helped me narrow down what I actually want to do versus maybe what sounds good or is kind of like glamorous or something. A great example of that is like working Saturday Night Live was an awesome experience, right? Like we were kind of the gophers, just like running around backstage and helping to seat the guests and stuff like that, set up for the after party, things like that. And it was a great experience. But after spending time like in that kind of entertainment world, I realized, okay, this is not for me. Even though I think like the lights and glamour of it all, I would have thought, oh, that's a dream. Yeah. As it turns out, I was like, oh, actually, I'm going to put my efforts and energies and kind of networking in this other mode over here.
I think anybody who knows you is not surprised that you have become this kind of public figure, this your presence and your brand, and we'll talk about that. Oh. But early on in your career, it really was more behind the scenes work that you were doing. So kind of talk about that transition to being, behind a camera and now presenting in front of one.
Yeah. So absolutely. When I started my career, I was not doing anything presenting wise or in front of the camera. Where that started to change was I worked actually. So after the Page program, I ended up getting a job at the Today Show. My role was at today.com, the web presence of the Today Show. And I know I'm going to really date myself here, but I was hired as the first video person for the website. This was like when today.com had just launched. This was just when networks were like, oh, maybe these shows should have a web presence. And they hired me because you know what? I had a camera in my hands and shot video at Miami. I mean, and then I had my year as a Page, and then I got this job, and I didn't really hold a camera at all as a Page. So they literally hired me like largely based on the experience that I had in Miami. And again, shooting and editing, those were things that I needed in this role. And then they also hired me because at that point I had been a Page, so I kind of knew how things worked. I knew the anchors, I knew some of the talent and the crew at the Today Show because of the temporary assignment I'd had at the show. So working at today.com, shooting web extra video is 100% a behind the scenes role, right? So I would pitch some video ideas. I would take a look at all the guests coming onto the show. I'd say, I think that I should interview this person for XYZ reason behind the scenes. And then that's where, at the time it was Meredith Vieira was co-anchor, and she'd say, now log on to today.com for the web extra footage of this. And like, that would just be me having like shot this video, running back to my desk, cutting it together and putting it online. When the transition to doing stuff on camera happened, it was in that role. And it was when my team, the video team at today.com, started growing because they realized, oh, this is a thing we should put more resources into. This is not going to go away. This is something we need to bulk up. So then I had a team of people. So some folks I would interview backstage, and largely the chefs, and Dr. Kleiman, you are a food person as I am, and I just jumped at every opportunity to interview these chefs, because the Today Show gets chefs like Daniel Boulud and Thomas Keller and Ina Garten and all these incredible chefs. And so I actually started a series called Today's Cooking School. So I would interview the chefs, and it would be a part of this series. Okay, so chefs are not generally very good on camera. Like, they're really good at cooking. They know how to use a knife, but they're not so good at like eye contact into a lens, and like talking points and stuff like that. They're much better, unless of course you're like very practiced. And these days, I think more and more chefs are becoming more practiced. But back then, so many chefs felt more comfortable talking to someone. And so what I was able to do as the video team was growing is I could say, like, hey, my colleague, like, hey, Kyle, will you please shoot this piece that I'm producing, because XYZ chef is more comfortable just talking to me, so I'm going to interview them on camera. So coworker Kyle would shoot it. I'd still take it back to my desk and edit the video together and flip it for the web. But that's how I started really pretty organically doing things on camera. And then it kind of grew from there. And I got some cool, really awesome interviews, like with Tina Fey backstage at the Today Show. And those interviews were the ones that were then seen by my next job opportunity. And that's how that led to like a more full-on on-camera role.
And take us to that. Why don't you talk a little bit about that next step in your career?
So this was a video news startup called Now This News. It's still around. Now This is great, although it has changed very much from what it was when I first joined, because I was one of the first dozen hires. So, startups will do that. They evolve very quickly. And it was so cool. It was really awesome to go from a network, this like big network, to a very small, nimble startup. And my job was VJ, video journalist, i.e. host, i.e. presenter. So my job, I did some producing, and I like had the flexibility to actually start like an entire vertical. I actually started the Now This Food vertical because food has always been the big passion of mine that I've just kind of weaseled into all of my other work. So I did do some producing, but mostly every day I just stood up and presented to the camera. And that really, like, oh my God, I look even at those early videos and I'm like, oh, that's embarrassing. But like, I was hired, so like I must have been okay. But like, being on camera is really a skill like any other, I think. And I really honed my chops in that job.
So the food thing, you mentioned the chefs, kind of came through the show. But it sounds like that was sitting there. So it's you're not surprised, I guess, is what I'm saying, that food and drink, if you will, turned out to be something that was kind of at the center of what you're doing.
I'm not surprised at this point, although ask any of my college friends and like they'll be surprised. Like my roommates in college are like, wait, what? Like I remember like you'd go to Bell Tower and get like blah, whatever, and they'd say like some weird gross snack that I picked up. And yeah, it's true. I think for me, actually, the food bug, if you will, bit when I moved to New York. So that first year I was in New York, my eyes were just like blown wide open by the food and the cultures, right? So this intersection of culture and cuisine that I had never really tapped before. I'd never had that opportunity to get involved in. So I was the girl who on the weekends would like drag all her friends out to Flushing, Queens, which is where like the real Chinatown is, and like to go to some dumpling place that I'd read about online. so I think that, my real interest in food was born when I moved to New York City. And then, in the following years, I was just so, I think it was when I realized that, this interest, this growing and kind of nascent interest in food has a place with my skills and interest in media. These two things don't have to be separate. I can marry them, and there are opportunities there. And so that's, I think that realization helped me steer.
Sure. So you do that, and then as Emily said in her introduction, you end up with these credits, Bobby Flay, the Bobby Flay thing, and so on. How do you take us to getting to that point?
Oh man. Okay. So I decided to go freelance from after I'd been in this role as VJ for a couple of years, and I wanted to see what else was out there. I wanted to not necessarily just work for this one company anymore. I'd had some offers to do other kind of hosting projects, and I wanted to be able to take them and really just explore what else was out there again. And I wanted to do more with food, but I didn't really know what that looked like. So I went freelance. To compress a longer story, essentially, I started my YouTube channel around that time because I needed a way to show what I could do, like actively, instead of just being like, yeah, I did this. I used to do this. Now hire me to do this. So I decided to create the kind of content that I want to be doing, right? How would I like to get hired? Well, let me just make it because I can shoot, I can edit, and I can host. And what I would like to do is more hosting. But no one's gonna just come up to me and be like, hi, can you host this? So I would shoot and edit myself. And that's how I started the YouTube channel, was initially really just as a means for my next thing, not realizing, and again, this is where Dr. Kleiman, you mentioned this, I kind of lucked out in terms of timing of things happening in the industry, because right around that time, the term YouTuber was just coming into existence. And I realized, oh wait, this thing I'm doing, this is a thing. This is a thing actually. And then, at that point, brands started to reach out as my audience grew, because I created content very, very consistently, several times a week. And consistency is really key in growing an audience, not only in terms of timing, but also content. So I was very consistent. I really threw myself into it. And as my audience grew, brands started coming to me. I partnered with Tastemade, which is this great multi-channel network, and even more opportunities came that way. And as those opportunities came and my exposure started to rise, then I got invitations like Food Network's Chopped and to be a judge on Beat Bobby Flay. And then my old team at the Today Show, had me back as a pretty consistent contributor, which was obviously also huge.
The landscape, though, out there, whether it's YouTube or other platforms, it's not shocking to say there's probably been 50 new channels while we've been sitting here talking, right? So how did you do that? I mean, it's stunning, and maybe it's a function of I'm not of that generation, obviously, but even for those who are, it's got to be daunting for people to say, how am I going to stand out when there are not only other talented people, but there's just so much out there? How are people going to find me? How do you think I guess what I'm saying long-windedly is, how did your audience find you think?
So, okay, and these are all fair questions and fair concerns, 100%. The YouTube algorithm, right? So understanding SEO, right? Understanding search engine optimization, understanding how to write a headline, understanding putting together a good thumbnail that's grabby. These things are things that the YouTube algorithm likes and is drawn to. And if you can start to play into that, then you'll show up more on the related videos tab. And that's huge. Yeah.
You're a brand now. I mean, and why don't you talk a little bit about, if you had to, do the elevator pitch about, okay, this is my brand and this is who I am. Do that for the audience, if you would. Talk about.
I will. Did my camera just get like super close on my face? It feels like it's super close all of a sudden.
It looks fine to me.
Okay, it didn't change. It changed for me.
Yeah.
Okay. Emily's saying yes, it did. It's super close. That's so weird. I got an incoming call. I think that's why. Oh, technology. Anyway, we'll just get nice and cozy. Sorry, Dr. Kleiman. I don't know how to fix this, so you guys are just going to get the intimate.
That's fine. Or if you want to slide back, if you think that's too an extreme. That is a 60. We used to call that a 60 minutes close up. Where
right.
Really safer
and
was
this
getting
is
somebody
when the interview gets really intense. That's when the interview gets really intense, right? Now spotlight's on.
We'll get Mike Wallace to make you admit you robbed the bank or something.
Yeah.
We were talking about brand, and just to kind of describe what that Katie Quinn brand is.
So it is all about curiosity, being driven by curiosity, and with a focus, surprise, surprise, on food. And food and travel, and these things go very hand in hand. And so does curiosity, right? I mean, really, I think that I'm a very curious person, as I think most people in this line of work are. I think that's why we get into it to a certain extent. And my personal life also has followed this similar trajectory of following curiosity. So after living in New York City for about a decade, I moved to London, was there for about 4 years, then moved to Italy, and am about to move to Toronto. And these are all decisions based on curiosity, based on, well, what if, and I wonder what this is like. And so, and my content is really just like follows these paths of curiosity.
London is interesting. For a long time, London and good food were kind of an oxymoron, right? I mean, English cooking for, time out of mind, people made fun of, but that's not the case anymore. I mean, I remember I went to London in the late 70s for the first time, and then taught there a bunch of times through what was our Laws Hall program, which unfortunately.
Yes, which I did with you, and is amazing. Yes.
Yeah, talk about that, and then we'll segue to Italy, because that's an easy one, obviously, to talk about. You do think of Italy and food, but talk about England and London in particular and food. Okay.
London has an amazing food scene. People don't understand, or actually, I think they might be starting to, right, with people like Yoda Ottolenghi, Nigella Lawson, and London is an incredibly diverse city with a lot of immigrants, and I think that it's just the population is so diverse, and I think that good food follows that. And so the food scene in London is incredible. Outside of London, the rest of the UK, I actually think that some of those stereotypes are kind of spot on, in terms of like, okay, you got your like fish and chip shop, and you got your pub, and like that's about it. But the food scene in London is really incredible. I think because its strength is its diversity.
So is it London to Italy? Is that the next move then?
Yep.
And
From London to Italy.
You mentioned your curiosity, but was there something in particular that now I'm going to do it, and now it's going to be Italy and Rome, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And that thing was COVID.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So this was kind of like a COVID making lemonade out of lemons kind of thing. And the impetus was that I have Italian heritage, and I had actually, before COVID even hit, I'd started looking more into that. When I was researching for my latest book that was just published in April of 2021, Cheese, Wine, and Bread, I traveled around Italy a lot researching the wine scene. It was very difficult research. And
Somebody had to do it.
yeah, someone had to do it. I stepped up to the plate. And while I was in Italy researching for the book, visiting vineyards, I stopped by a town that supposedly my great grandfather was born in, and actually ended up finding his birth certificate there. With that document, a little bit later, I realized, whoa, like I'm eligible for Italian dual citizenship. Is, you know, as long as I can prove this, like this heritage, and so that was a thing. COVID exploded. London was a horrible place to be, and actually, my visa, me and my husband, our visas were gonna run up pretty soon. So we're like, let's go to Italy now. Now's the time. Why not? Let's explore this possibility of getting citizenship, and also, you know, living in southern Italy and really getting my language skills proficient. So yeah, we just dove right in. It was kind of a last minute decision. It was like about a month before we made the decision.
Wow. Did you have any facility with Italian before you moved to Italy, or was it all learning while you're on the ground there?
A very, very beginner. Again, so I spent about a month in Italy while I was researching the book. And before that trip, I had taken like an elementary beginners level course, Italian course in London. So I knew the very, very basics, but you know, not much. And so it was quite a learning curve. But so great. And now, you know, Italian is one of my absolute favorite things.
The book is obviously something we want to spend some time with. So talk about Wine, Cheese, and Bread, or Cheese, Wine, and Bread. Kind of the genesis of it, and just take us through how you got there, and then we'll talk about the book.
So I think I had written another book before, right? Avocados, a cookbook, kind of a smaller, kind of like coffee table book, all avocados recipes. And I knew I wanted to write more, and I wanted to take on a bigger project, something that wasn't like purely a cookbook, but of course I knew food would be a part of it. And it was when I moved, it was after I moved to London, and I had a project with a video project with a cheese company, the Conte Cheese Association. And it was the first opportunity I had to like see how cheese was made. So like spending time with the farmers who have the cows, who produce the milk, and like being in the fields with the cows, and then seeing that milk go to the cheesemaker, seeing how that's all done, you know, taking it to the affineur where the cheese is matured, and then the cheesemonger where it's sold. And I was just fascinated, because I think that I had always proclaimed to love cheese, right? Just like somebody, I love cheese.
Yeah.
And yet I could not have told you how milk becomes cheese. And I could not have told you how the same milk from like cow A could become a brie, right? It could become a blue cheese, or it could become like a cheddar, right? These are all very different kinds of cheeses. Like, how does that happen? And so starting to research that and kind of nerd out about some of that, that's when I got bit by the fermentation bug. It's like, oh, fermentation is the magic element of this that transforms milk into cheese. There are so many other things that go into it, but you know, we'll keep it really simple here. If you want to learn more, go read the book. And then, you know, I realized that that wait a second, it's not just cheese that's fermented, right? And of course, I knew that beer was something that was fermented. I knew that like kombucha and kimchi, right? Like these are fermented things. But I did not realize, and this is where the spark came, so many of my favorite essential table items cheese, wine, and bread are all fermented, where I kind of was like, oh, I think there's something here. Put together a book proposal and contacted a literary agent, and that's how that began.
How was the writing process? Because what we share is that I certainly like wine, bread, and cheese, and I've written, but always academically. And but I've always been, as a lot of people are, staring at a white piece of paper is about, at least for me, was the most intimidating thing in the world, and just getting going. So, how was it, both with the avocado book and this book? How was the process? Because you have other moving parts in your life. Did you carve out time to write? I mean, how did that kind of integrate into all the other things you were doing as part of your daily, job?
I love this question, because I think if people ask me a question, they assume that like I would just have all day to write. And it's like, no, I was still working and like doing other stuff while I was writing. And so I found, for me, first thing in the morning is when I kind of get my writing mojo on. And later in the day is when I have the like looking at a blank white sheet or the white screen and just like, I don't even know. But for whatever reason, first thing in the morning, cup of coffee, research notes or other kind of notes to draw from. I found that like falling into that routine helped. And then if I was stuck on something, then I would kind of like bookmark it to come back to later. And then the whole rest of that day in the back of my mind, I'd be working on that or kind of problem solving whatever may have been a stumbling block within those first like 3 hours of the day, writing right from like 6 to 9, or it was a little flexible, but that kind of thing. And so then the next morning I could come back at it with kind of that problem solving having had occurred, and I could dive right back in.
A lot of our audience certainly avails themselves of cheese and bread and wine, and they may think, well, what I know is that I like what I eat, but there's obviously going to be some insights and some takeaways for the readers of the book. What would you hope that somebody who reads the book will take away, that they'll know that they didn't know, and maybe somehow have a greater appreciation or maybe more interest in pursuing different kinds of beer, wine, cheese, etc.? Yeah, what's the take? What do you hope is the takeaway for the reader of the book?
Well, one of the things that I have enjoyed so much about the book being actually out into the world is hearing from people about the different ways it has affected them. And it's really different depending on who the reader is. And so like that's super cool for me as the author to hear, because different things jump out to different people. So for some people, it's the narrative that I very much include my personal journey in the book. And for some people, that that kind of emotional hook, they feel invested, and that really speaks to them, and then they can like learn about this other stuff, but almost as a tangent to the personal journey that I lay out. For other people, it's like, man, I can finally walk into a wine shop and not feel intimidated, or like know what to ask for, know some of the adjectives to use to describe these things that I'm tasting or thinking or feeling. So it's kind of been all across the board. But one of the things, I guess, to more directly answer your question, that I really hope that readers take away is understanding this symbiosis between the people crafting the food and the food itself, and the integrity that goes into quality cheese, quality wine, quality bread, makes such a difference. And when I say integrity, I mean not just the work ethic and skill of the artisan creating it, but also the decisions that artisan had to make before even beginning to craft it. Meaning, where do they source their ingredients? What were the decisions they made in the field, right, with the grapes? with the grains, all of those decisions are things that you can taste in the end product if you know what to look for, if you know what to taste for. It is like literally a quality difference that you can taste. And so that's why like a block cheddar that is like super cheap that you can get wrapped in plastic in the grocery store versus a more artisanally made kind of like farmhouse cheddar, a wheel of it wrapped in like a muslin cloth, which, you know, you won't see the muslin cloth in the cheese shop when you go buy it, but if it was made in that way, just a world of a difference in terms of how it got there, and also the taste.
I was curious, it's just something that hit me. How does this affect you when you go to restaurants? I mean, you bring to that experience, obviously, a background and an interest that the average person just never thinks about. I guess in thinking of our field, that what you studied and what I taught, it's like people who go see movies who learn, you know, who know how movies are made. A lot of times go, oh, that's a bunch of zeros and ones, you know, that's not anything real. It's just some digital thing. And it, you know, it changes the experience. Has your immersion in the food culture and all the things that you've talked about, that you've learned, how does it impact you when you just go for a meal?
It's definitely heightened my appreciation. I think more than, because I totally get, the thing of like watching a movie and just being like, I mean, there was a while where I would just like watch extras in a scene and just be like, those aren't real people. Like I couldn't just see extras as invisible people. I'd be like, you know, the director like told them what to be doing. They're like in the background drinking a coffee in a Starbucks or something. And so it can be distracting at a restaurant, just as it is in like that other situation with the extras. But by and large, it has simply heightened my appreciation. Because valuing something gives it is therefore inherently a more rich experience.
Sure. I think some people listening to this may think that, well, this must be an expensive proposition to get the right cheese, to get the right wine, etc. With all the things Katie's talking about going into it. I get the sense that it doesn't have to be, but can you talk about that? In other words, can one eat at a level that you'd wish at and still not, you know, break the bank?
Yeah, great question. The essential answer is yes, especially with wine, because wine, there's like so much marketing and mumbo jumbo. You can get some really good bottles for, you know, well, in Italy, I could get a really good bottle for between €5 and €8, like really delicious, or, you know, and €15 would be like, oh, this is excellent. I'm taking this over to a friend's for dinner. It does, my experience is a little pricier in America, but still, you know, $15 to $25 for a bottle that's gonna be really stinking good. And you know, that you could bring over to a friend's place if they're hosting a dinner party. Cheese is an interesting one because cheese can, like, quality cheese can be expensive, but there's a correlation there. You're paying for a better product. So I think there's a way to buy cheese and not spend a lot, but if you want quality cheese, it's one of those things that you will have to spend maybe more than you want, but it's like eating a great steak or something, right? You're not going to do it every single day. So when you do it, it's worth it, and you just know that it's going to kind of be a treat.
Sure. So let's talk about cooking and recipes. You know, some of us, I cook in my more recent times, having mostly retired, I have a little bit more time. So I'm cooking, but I'm one of those who, boy, I follow a recipe slavishly, and I get nervous if, I don't have exactly the right ingredient because, oh my God, it won't taste good. But so to me, it's just absolute magic for people to actually create recipes, not just follow them, but create. And you've created some really interesting ones. So yeah, talk about that process a little bit.
So this is where the experience of, so I went to culinary school. This was shortly after I started the YouTube channel, actually. And it started to kind of take off, and I kind of had a freak out moment. I had like hardcore imposter syndrome because I realized, whoa, people are reaching out to me to then go be an expert about food and talk about food like I know what I'm talking about. Like I have no idea what I'm talking about. Like I'm a mass communications and theater person with an interest in food. And I just felt like I needed to give myself credibility in order to feel confident stepping into this career and really pursuing it. So I went to culinary school at Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. I did the 3-month cuisine de base program. So like the basic culinary program. This was, while I was actively shooting and publishing YouTube videos weekly while I was there, and often incorporating my life in Paris and this little flat I'd found and some of the things I was learning at culinary school. So, went very hand in hand with the career that I had already kind of set out on in New York. At any rate, having that experience really helped me feel confident in not only in the kitchen and just like my overall skills, but also in creating recipes. Because once you understand the kind of essential elements and how they can interplay with each other, it's just all that much easier. Like Samin Nosrat has become very famous now, salt, fat, acid, heat. But it's like, yeah, once you know those elements, you can put together a good meal. So Dr. Kleiman, I'm curious, if you tend to follow recipes like to a T, are you like, do you consider yourself more of a baker or more of a cook, or what's that interplay like?
The latter, what I discovered is the wonders of the Instapot, where you can
oh my gosh.
anything. And once I learned how to use it and not, make sure I didn't scald myself. But yeah, I'm still much more happy to have people, cook for me because I feel I have really no moves, on it. But being able to at least, I feel a sense of achievement following a recipe and having something come out, well. And
that
my wife,
is an achievement. Yes.
My wife's much more, she'll take some chances. So a couple things. We're getting towards the end. I have to ask you about cheddar brownies. So the cheddar brownie recipe.
So
talk about that. I know that's getting buzz.
Yeah, this is one of the recipes in the book Cheese, Wine, and Bread. They kind of took off after the book was published. It was the thing with like a lot of the media outlets that they covered the book, or the shows that I was asked to come on, that they kind of clung to. And it is for good reason, because these are legitimately amazing, and they are what they sound like, right? Cheddar brownies. So chunks of like an aged cheddar. So right, it's got like the crystallization in it. And basically, so chunks of it, and you put it in with the brownie mix towards the end of cooking. And in the oven, it takes on like a caramelization. It kind of turns a little sweet, and it is amazing, but it still maintains like a hint of the saltiness. If you think about like so many incredible chocolate recipes, they'll have a little bit of like flaky Malden sea salt on top, right? Because it's that sweet and salty combo. It's a little bit of salty in the sweet that really brings that sweetness to the next level. So the saltiness in the cheese acts in that way. And then also there are like nutty elements, right? Like the flavor profile is so much deeper than just if you were to add some Malden sea salt on top. So it really brings a lot to brownies. I mean, in a way that is just legitimately amazing. Like, this is not a novelty thing. This is just a very delicious brownie. And you should try making them if you haven't yet.
Yeah, absolutely will. Is it a lot of not just with the cheddar brownies, but generally as you've developed recipes, a lot of trial and error, or is it pretty much, I think this will work, and it typically does, or, because again, that whole process to me is just absolutely mysterious.
It definitely depends. I would say probably more the latter of like, I kind of know I have a pretty good sense of this and I just need to like test it out. But there are some recipes that are a little more shots in the dark and really take a lot, like a dozen tests before I can even feel like confident serving it for anyone. Aside from my husband.
Yeah, well, that is actually kind of leading. Do you like to cook, not just for him, but I mean, do you like to cook for company? I mean, how are you in food and socializing kind of interact?
Yeah, dinner parties are one of my absolute favorite things. Yeah, I think my favorite ways to spend time with friends is at the table over food, and I love hosting people. I really do. I think it's one of my favorite things. Yeah.
I bet they like to come to your house for dinner. I'm just
I think there's
some reason.
No, you typically no complaints. Yeah, although it's funny because especially after cheese, wine, and bread, people are like all like uncertain about the wine that they'll bring, right? As like a host gift or something. They're like, I don't know if it's any good. It's like, all right, please. I still drink $3 Chuck. Don't worry.
Yeah. So we need to get some of your favorites. There are so many cooking shows out there and food related media content, obviously delivered on lots of platforms. So, especially when our grown daughter is visiting, she and my wife will watch just hours of the British baking show and the Top Chef over the years and what have you. Gosh. Is there some program on some platform food related that you just still say is, boy, I'm happy to sit down and watch this. It's really fun.
I do love the Great British Baking Show. Yeah. I do love that. I really enjoyed David Chang's series Ugly Delicious on Netflix. I would say, and with the media scene today too, where it's like there's so much and it's all happening really fast, that is how my consumption is too. So often on Instagram, I'll find something that I think is really cool or is really inspirational. But again, it's less of like, oh, this is my favorite thing, and more just like, it's like a pop, like a hit, like that is awesome. Okay, cool. And then I take it with me moving forward, and I won't necessarily always circle back to the same creator or the same platform. I will say that Food 52 is one of my favorite websites. And I also, have been a contributor for them.
Right?
And a co-host for one of their podcasts. So, but I don't mean I'm saying this in all honesty, not just to plug anything that I do. I think their recipes are awesome. Their articles about just food and culture are really good. So they are a go-to for me.
Okay, one more favorite we got to get in. This may be impossible to answer, but you've got one meal out. Where do you eat it? Anywhere.
One meal out?
Yeah, you've got one meal to eat out. In other words, what restaurant, if you had one restaurant to choose, having lived in all these amazing cities, for food, I know that's a really tough question, but is there one where you just go, if tomorrow the world ends, I'm so glad tonight I got to eat at?
Oh my gosh. It's nearly impossible, and mostly because the most memorable meals I've had and my favorite meals have almost always been at someone's home.
Oh.
Right. So after living in Italy for a little over a year, it's like those home cooked meals were where it's at, and like the Sunday lunches that just stretch like all day. Those are my absolute favorites and most memorable. I'll give you an answer of a place out though, which is kind of hilarious. But every time I'm from Athens, Ohio, and every time I go to Athens, there's a little, they call it a Mexican restaurant, but it's like this hippie Mexican restaurant that's like not really authentically Mexican at all, but it's like Mexican inspired. And it's really, really, really delicious and just unique. And it's called Casa Nueva. And I think that it's so nostalgic. And I've never had Mexican food like it anywhere else. And there are flavors also that I couldn't even find in Italy. I mean, I literally could not find cilantro where I lived in southern Italy. So, yeah, I think hilariously, it's like certainly no Michelin starred restaurant. I've eaten at better places.
Sure.
But I would say last meal, Casa Nueva, Athens, Ohio.
We'll have to get over there sometime. I can't believe how quickly time goes. I mean, which is, I guess, a good thing, because it means we're having a wonderful conversation. But before we let you go, we need to have you remind everybody where they find you on social media, where they get the book, and just anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at QKatie. Also YouTube, my channel is, look at that, the lower third. I'm so impressed on it. On YouTube, my channel is QKatie. Pretty much across social media, Twitter and all this stuff is QKatie. Oh my, I'm so impressed with these lower thirds right now.
These people don't mess around.
Killing it, honestly. And yeah, and then my book is Cheese, Wine, and Bread, Discovering the Magic of Fermentation in England, Italy, and France. And
I assume Amazon and
yeah,
would be
Amazon and all the places, every, it's sold worldwide and hopefully at your local independent bookseller as well.
That's great. Thank you so much. I know Emily is gonna have some closing comments, but Katie, for me, thank you. It's just been a joy to talk to you.
Dr. Kleiman, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And we have Katie's book linked in the event listing for this. So you can go there and find the link right to her book. So thank you, Katie and Dr. Kleiman, so much for joining us today. We really enjoyed hearing from you both and learning more about cheese, wine, and bread and how the book and the recipes came to life. Thank you to our audience for tuning in today. Our next and last session of Winter College 2022 is Cooking at Home with Jungle Gym's Lee Oaks, class of '83. And this starts at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. We are looking forward to seeing you then. On behalf of the Miami University Alumni Association, thank you for joining us today, and love and honor.